Face Forward Media. This is Healthcare Musings. I'm your host, Dr. Hashem Hasabala. Welcome, everybody, to Healthcare Musings. So happy to have you with me. I am so delighted to have my friend, my partner in crime, Mr. Gil Bashe here. He is chair of Global Health and Purpose for Finn Partners, a worldwide, very prestigious communications company, and he is author of Healing the Sick Care System, Why People Matter. Fantastic book, and I really had to have him on the show to talk about it. So welcome, Gil Bashe. So happy to have you.
Well, Doctor, thank you. And I just want to say that our history goes back quite some time. We actually have been collaborating on writing and sharing writing with each other for years. Obviously, your work on Being Well on Medium, which has become a major health platform, and then obviously you're serving as one of the editors at Medical Life, has been really instrumental in really reaching people and providing them an insight into the life and heart of a dedicated physician that you are, and dealing with patients often at very difficult moments of their health journey. And you speak from great personal example and experience, and I think that influences the tone and touch of your work. So it's a pleasure to be with you today.
Oh, thank you so much. The check is in the mail, Mr. Bashe. Appreciate you very much.
Well, yeah, I think you deserve the check for how hard you work.
That's very kind of you. I really appreciate it. So the honor is mine to have you on the show. Before we begin, I just want to, what is it that you do? I see you all over digital health, and you're very big into digital health. You're very big on Medica. The work you do is fantastic. Exactly. Help me understand the audience. What is it that you do?
Well, let me just, first of all, I'm privileged to be part of Finn Partners. You mentioned it's one of the world's largest independent communications organizations with 37 offices around the world and 1,300 people. And my role is actually to serve as a champion for two distinct business units within Finn. One, our health business, which is among our largest. We deal with the whole health ecosystem, which influenced my thinking about this book, which has become a bestseller. We work with, obviously, payers and patients and health professionals, providers, policymakers, and product innovators. So the 5 Ps.
5 Ps, right.
5 Ps. We're a very diverse business. Obviously, hospital systems, leaders like yourself, who are in hospital systems, caring for both the stability of the system and the well-being or survival of the patient. We're working with pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies, medical device companies, and so forth, all around the world. And it's a privilege to champion health innovation that can save and sustain people's lives. The challenge, and this comes forward in my book in a very personal way, the challenge is innovation is only good if people have access to it, if doctors don't have to battle for it, if society can afford to pay for it. So that's one side of my professional life. The other side of my professional life, which is actually interwoven, is what we call our purpose and social impact business, which touches on both issues of responsible business and climate innovation and sustainability and inclusion of the workforce and taking a look at a business's impact on the environment. All of that is handled by purpose and social impact, both for NGOs, not-for-profit organizations, and multinational for-profit organizations. All of us, and I think you'd feel the same from your work, your writing makes it clear, all of us feel more invigorated if we have a sense of purpose. And, even if you're working at a humongous Fortune 100 company, that company has to convey to its customers, its stakeholders, including its employees, what is the purpose, what is the value of that business through its voice. So that's what I do with health and purpose. Obviously, if you think of what we're going to be talking about, the book, we're a communications agency. I fundamentally believe, I know you do as well, communication is part of the care. It's not sort of like separate from the care. When you're dealing with a family who has someone in the ICU or recovery, anxious, they're worried, they're hoping. Your words are an extension of your professional ability to care for that patient. And so what we do is connect that fragmented, diverse ecosystem on the health side, and on the purpose and social impact side, convey an enterprise's commitment to provide value to society in one way or another.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's very helpful to know for me and the audience. So, speaking of purpose, your book mainly talks about the fact that the purpose, it seems, and correct me if I'm wrong, the purpose of the healthcare system has gone astray. Would that be a fair sum of what the
I think
main message of your book is?
you put the pin right on the spot of the map. We've become a transactional system. I think probably what inspired you, knowing you as I do, inspired you to get into medicine was the excitement and the possibility of actually helping and make a difference in the world. And lo and behold, as someone very senior in the system today, you're dealing with multiple stakeholders who have very different agenda, whether it's getting prior authorization in the system, whether it's paying for the caring for the budget, whether it's keeping people alive, whether it's choosing the right product to help that patient. There's a lot going on in your life. Our system has shifted from one that centers around the patient to actually you probably spend X amount or smaller percentage caring for the patient and a bigger amount dealing with all of the responsibilities you have within this fragmented health ecosystem. So you hit it right on the head.
Yes, absolutely. And what was the points of the book that were most poignant were your own personal stories with your daughter. I've also had a daughter who was very sick and had to engage with the healthcare system a lot. And those stories really were very meaningful for me, very poignant, and it reinvigorated the point. And after reading your book and then speaking with Matthew Zachary, a mutual friend of ours who was a patient advocate,
There's a great
um,
new book coming out in just a few weeks.
yes, his book is fantastic. I also read that as well. It just reinvigorated in me the point is when it's so easy to get into the drudgery of the work, right? Oh, I got to see the patient. Oh, I got to write a note. Oh my God, I got to put my billing. Oh my God, now I got to get the ultrasound. And sometimes you can forget there's this patient here who doesn't want to be there, right? They don't want to be sick. And there's a lot that I can do to make that little few moments that we're together better, right? Make him feel better. As I'm prescribing the antibiotics and giving the fluids and doing the vasopressors and maybe putting a breathing tube in and talking to their family. But that moment where if I can smile, hold their hand, make them feel a little bit better, and you know what else can I do for you? I'm going to do everything I can to make you feel better, whatever you need. It's not like it wasn't there before. And reading your story and making you see the picture of the healthcare system from a larger perspective and Matthew's perspective, it just it reminded me why the purpose. What's my purpose? You know?
I think you're so spot on because often patients and their families don't remember what you were doing. They remember their experience with you. If the experience is a unfavorable and unpleasant experience, it not only impacts their feeling about how they feel about you, and I know you, so they have great experience, but it impacts their experience of the hospital system. It impacts their experience of even trusting the medical system. In my own case, I talk about my daughter having medical PTSD. Was misdiagnosed so many times that when a doctor sort of suggests something, that suggestion is filtered through all those experiences of being treated for diseases she didn't have because the symptoms mimic another condition. Rather than a doctor says, sort of having the courage, as one doctor finally did, saying, I don't know what's going on here. Let's take a moment to figure it out. Doctors often feel for the sake of the patient. It's not intentional they do this for the sake of the patient. They want to give an answer. They want to do something. Doctors are fix-it people. And so how do you fix it? You prescribe a medicine. You order a test. You do something. Now, sometimes it takes a lot more courage to say, I'm not really clear what we have here. We need to take a little more time. And actually, in the book, I talk about we rush doctors and health professionals so through their day. Now you've got to see X amount of people, X amount of people you've got to visit. Now nurses have X amount of people they've got to care for on the floor, and they've got to run between this and that. Between medicines and bedpans and pain meds, they're so busy that no one has time to stop and say, what's the underlying cause of this condition? So we actually add cost to the system because we don't give expert physicians like yourself often enough the time you need to think and analyze what's cooking here. It's not intentional, but you kind of get into the rhythm of the system. And the rhythm of the system actually jacks up the cost of the system because we never really get to the bottom of the problem. We just sort of say, well, they're more comfortable now. Next.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so the book sort of looks at it from people's personal experiences that doctors who are succeeding consistently and doctors who are kind of moving it through the system. Now, in the case of names of the book, I do mention doctors in the book, just for the point of reference. If I had some concern, I didn't mention the doctor's name or the institution's name. In the case of people doing it right, I did mention their name because I think that they're actually best practice case studies that we should have. And one of the things you talked about, you kind of alluded to that in the beginning of the book. I went to visit a hospital and I wasn't sure if I was in a hospital or a hospitality center.
yeah.
And so I spoke to the chair of the department and I said, this is very strange. I mean, people are pleasant here. If there's a few moments wait, they apologize. They ask if I'd like something to drink. Um, they, kind of escort you to the exit or the entrance. What's cooking here? And this chair of the department said, nobody wants to be here. Right. Nobody wants to be here. We want to treat people like we would be treated, like we want to be treated. And, down to the fact that she said when our administrative staff are really busy, we, the physicians, jump in to assist so they can have their lunch breaks or their breaks on time and get home at a decent time. We work as a complete team rather than the lofty physician and the lowly administrator. She said, we're all part of the patient's experience. We all want that to be as good as it can be. That's a best practice. What can I say? That's what should be happening.
No, absolutely, and those stories is what it made me pause and say, yeah, I mean, wow, it makes a difference when you just have when you apologize. I'm so sorry for the wait, or because a lot of times we're waiting forever, right? We're waiting and we don't understand, and no one's explaining, and that constant reminder of the experience was very poignant. And as soon as I spoke with Matthew, I really really am making it a point to go out of my way to smile, to make them feel as best as I can, if I can. A lot of times in the ICU, the patients are comatose or they're on a ventilator and they can't interact. And if it's not with the patient, then with the family, to smile, to look at them, to shake their hand, and to say, we'll do the best we can. We'll take good care of her. And then what else can I do for you? I started asking that question, like, what else can I do for you? And I'll do everything I can to do and try to follow up on the things that I say.
That
And,
makes
and
I mean, Hesh, that makes such a great difference. And when you see that connective tissue that you've established with the family, they'll never forget that. And we often forget that our feelings are part of the healing process. Example I give in the book, as you know, I have a daughter with a rare disease. She's had a number of surgeries, and we had to fly out to LA to Santa Monica for very specialized surgery. You probably know what it's about, called MALS, where
yeah,
the ligament is essentially closing off an artery in this case the GI system. And my daughter was about to go on a feeding tube. She was down to the low 80s in weight and couldn't eat solids. In this case, what happened was we went to this doctor. It's a complex surgery, two surgical teams, a GI robotic team, and essentially a vascular backup team in case they nick the artery. Not good.
mm, Wow.
And and, um, and at the end of the surgery, the doctor, the head surgeon called my wife. We were sitting in the, where all people are, the cafeteria,
Yeah.
and he starts off, he says, first of all, he says, "It's Danny Shohab. Everything was great. Right off the bat, finish line. Great surgery. Daughter's doing fine. Where are you guys?" Cafeteria. "Sit where you are. I'll find you. I'll come right down." He had pictures of the surgeries explaining what they had to do, what the situation is now. And then at the end of the conversation, he did something that doctors generally don't do. He takes out his hospital business card, flips it over. He writes down a number. He says, "This is my personal cell phone number. You have any concerns, any questions, you call this number." And I said to myself that he exhibited such sort of intuitive understanding of how parents would feel after a pretty scary chapter. He wanted to lower the tension. And I was so impressed. He never said, "This is Dr. Shohab." It was always like, "Hey, it's Danny Shohab." He didn't feel the need to sort of impress. We knew he was a doctor. Didn't need to reinforce the doctor, doctor, doctor. Um, and we did have to call him, believe it or not, for an emergency while we were out there. And he picked up the phone immediately, listened. He said, "Here's what you should do," and gave us clear direction. I was impressed, by the way. The other doctor we interviewed was in New York City, major medical center, did all the right things, sat down, eye level to my daughter. And when my wife, who was on the phone during the consult, said, we spoke with our patient advocate about this, he shut her down and he said, "Who are you going to believe, me or a patient?" Well, my daughter is the patient sitting right next to me in the room. It's essentially saying to her, "You, this is all about me, not about."
That really surprised me. I mean, that's something that I can't fathom saying
He
to
felt
someone.
challenged. He felt challenged. He didn't like, he was feeling that the surgery, he was not certain the surgery would be successful. By the way, the surgery was very successful. My daughter eats solid foods normally now. Whether it's a barbecue chicken or sushi, she eats what she wants. He, was one of the best robotic surgeons in New York City, wasn't confident and was recommending she continue sort of her trajectory, which was obviously at the rate she was going was feeding tube. And
Wow.
I look at this. He could have said, say, I'm not certain, I'm not clear. But no, he was so clear and he was so wrong. So there you have it. Doctors are people too. They have emotional needs. They want to be reaffirmed. But it's okay for a doctor to say, this is a complex situation. I've taken down a lot of notes. I'm going to speak to some colleagues and I'm going to circle back as quickly as possible. Nothing wrong with that. I do that professionally. But doctors intuitively, I think it must be at the white coat ceremony. You get the white coat, you buy the stethoscope, swing it around your neck, feeling very doctor-like, and then you sort of say, "I am all knowing. I am all knowing."
But we're not all know. I mean, we're not all knowing, and I think I've said this. I've written that the difference between an AI chatbot, which will hallucinate, just make something up because it can't say "I don't know." The superpower of the human doctor is to hold that patient's hand and say, "You know what? I don't know exactly what's going on, and I'm committed to working with you to find out."
Boy, I'll
Like,
tell you,
I mean, that's the superpower that will, I think, make physicians and clinicians and advanced practice providers irreplaceable.
you're
It's the
absolutely right. Look,
human connection. It's
uh,
that
the
emotion that you're
human,
talking about.
that's actually, by the way, whenever I'm using like ChatGPT and I see an answer that I know is not correct, and I say, "That's not correct because," the answer is always, "You're right." And right, you're right. Well, what do I need you for if I'm right? It's like a little bit. And I can sometimes get 3 times in a row where I read it and it says it's not there. And it will always say, "You're right." Well, we have to remember that ChatGPT AI it's a shadow of us. It's like Peter Pan disconnected from his shadow. The
Right.
shadow has no independent ability. It's connected to Peter Pan. When it disconnects, it's dormant, and Wendy has to sew it back on. AI is curated knowledge, good, bad, and indifferent. It takes an expert like yourself, who's objective, to look at it and say, "Well, it's in the ballpark, but not quite. And
Right.
that's where you come in as the learned intermediary. I would say that a patient who comes in with a lot of pages from Google or ChatGPT, that's an amazing patient because they're curious. They want a partner. Instead of shutting them down and saying, "I see you went to Google. I'm the expert here." Instead of doing that, if doctors just said, "Tell me what you found. Let's start there."
No, that's true. I'll confess that when you see a patient walk into your office with the Dr. Google in the packet, inside I'm like, "Oh my god, it's one of these," right? As I've come to learn that it's a starting point. It's like what you said. Well, what do you say? And I had resisted AI for a long while, and then had a friend of mine who was in the AI space, not a physician, but healthcare adjacent, who had has a sick daughter as well, who got a kidney transplant. He told me I would much rather have a physician with an AI co-pilot than one without.
Yes.
And it made me pause. And well, if AI can make me a better diagnostician, why not? Right? It's not going to take, it's not a threat to me. It's going to say, this is what I'm thinking is going on. What am I not thinking? And it helped. And I used it and we made it the correct diagnosis. But right after that episode, we made the correct diagnosis and that patient walked out of the hospital intact. And it was fantastic. It really changed my view that if it can make me, like he says, a 10x doctor, why not? Why would I resist that?
Yeah, I call AI not artificial intelligence because intelligence is organic. It can't be artificial. I refer to it as augmented
And
intelligence.
I like that. I like that. That makes a
It's
lot of sense.
augmenting the human ability to make informed decisions faster. And you have to take it for what it's worth. You have to sort of say, it's adding to my thinking process. Now I need to vet it out with other sources. But it's not Bible. It's no there's no authoritative divine voice in the information. It's information, as I think you said, hallucinations earlier. It's good, bad, and indifferent, and we have to factor it in. In the book, I I really talk about, I think the reason the book became a bestseller, and that was a surprise to me, was it's, as you pointed out, it's very human. It's not it no, I deal with the issues that you have to deal with, your colleagues deal with, I have to deal with every day in a very warm narrative, vulnerable form. And I think the vulnerability and the authenticity made the book very popular among physicians. As a matter of fact, the AMA CEO John White endorsed the book um, because what I think is lacking, and tell me what you think. When I was growing up, doctors had they focused on the patient, and they were the advocate, they were the champion of the patient's well-being, and they could move the system. Now, if you needed an x-ray, you got an x-ray. If you needed a medication, you got the medication. Nobody sort of like grabbed the doctor by the neck. Now, today, doctors are kind of like the middle people, right? I think you need this medication. You've tried these other ones, it hasn't worked. You go to your pharmacist, they say, not on your formulary. You need a prior authorization. And now the doctor gets a call back, and you're battling with the payer and trying to get a peer-to-peer consult to explain your decision. And so if you think of the amount of time a doctor has to spend explaining themselves to a non-medical authority and then asking for a consult, and often you're an intensivist, you get a doctor on the phone who's a dermatologist.
I was about to say it's not a peer,
Right.
actually.
It's
It's
not a
not a
peer.
peer.
I have a friend who's an oncologist who got on the phone a dermatologist on the payer side. And he says, look, I'm not dealing with pimples here. I'm dealing with pancreatic cancer. It's like, what is that? And so if you take a look at the cost, we spend $4 trillion on health in this country. $4 trillion. It's 20% of our GDP. 30% of that is on administration. If we were a charity and you said like Charity Navigator, oh, 30% of every dollar donated goes to administration, you wouldn't give to that charity,
Yeah.
right? You
No,
wouldn't.
No,
You wouldn't give to that
you're right
charity.
about that. And it's not, I went through that exact same situation with my son. He's been having GI issues and there's this medication that we wanted to try and I had to get prior authorization and it was denied. And I just didn't, I didn't feel like it. I'm in the appeal business, right? I could have written the letter. I just didn't, I'm like, you know what, man, thank God I'm of means. I'll just pay for it. And I went to
Right.
GoodRx and I got it
Yeah.
for a fraction of the cost that I would have gotten it through my insurance.
I have to do the
That's
same
so
thing.
frustrating. That's so frustrating. And so I feel it. And we've just been, we can no longer be advocates because we have to, we've, we're forced to do this circus to try to get the things that we need for our patients. And it's very difficult and it burns people out. It burns a lot of people out. And that's a crisis. I mean, Matthew said, I don't want my doctor to be suicidal. And that really took me aback. Like, you don't want your doctor to be burnt out. That's so true.
But
Um,
yet, greater than 40% of doctors are burnt out. Greater than
right.
50% of nurses are burnt out. How many in your hospital, don't answer the question, but how many 50+ nurses do you see working the floor? I mean, they want to go into home health care, long-term
Yeah.
care nursing, home nursing, you name it. But, a lot of them are like, I've had it. I had, and I mentioned them in the book, two amazing doctors who, one, quote, retired, but he wasn't really retiring. He, by the way, was deputy chair of the Department of Urology at a major teaching hospital. And what happened was he said, I love patient care. I love medicine. I can't still dealing with the system any longer. I can't stand, he said, I spend 90 minutes a day battling for a patient. And he just had it. He says, I don't need to do this any longer. I'm getting high blood pressure from this. I have two cousins I mentioned in the book, orthopedic surgeons, who are doing workman's comp today because they they have in this case it was, I think I mentioned, my wife had a complete rotator cuff repair, and and he was trying to get approval for the surgery. They said have her do 6 weeks of PT. She said, and he said she can't use the arm any longer. It's torn. It's she had almost a complete tear. You PT is not going to 6 weeks of PT before we'll approve the surgery. So she suffered for 6 weeks. What sort of system in a modern country with the medicine we have and the money we spend? And by the way, they ended up doing the surgery, obviously, it was necessity, but they spent money on 6 weeks on pain meds and PT, unnecessary. So it's not that we have bad medicine. We have some of the best trained doctors in the world.
That's
We're
true.
the home to innovation in the world, right? Some of the greatest innovative therapies and medical devices were created, here in this country or brought forward from this country. And I think we would agree we spend more money. Actually, as a developed nation, we spend 2 to 3 times more than most developed nations. And yet we're living 5 to 10 years less. And our doctors are claiming that they're burnt out, and our nursing staff are claiming we're burnt out. It, it it's a sick care system that could be immediately a healthcare system again. And the book hopefully points out how do we do that. And I think you've started the journey, my friend. I want to salute you by
Thank you.
asking patients, what can I do for you? Sitting down and holding a hand, smiling, sort of giving the hopeful, complete report of where a loved one is. You're healing the sick care system, one patient at a time. That's all it takes. And you're doing the good work of the book. And I can't thank you enough for being a role model.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's such a tragedy every time I see a bedside nurse leave, especially a critical care nurse. They're the best trained, the best nurses, and I saw their superpower during the pandemic. And whenever a physician leaves the field because they can't take it anymore, that's such a tragedy. Unless they're a bad physician, most aren't, right? So to me, it's such a tragedy. It's even a bigger tragedy when they commit suicide. And we've had colleagues commit suicide, and it's just devastating.
Yeah,
Um,
then the system is sick and needs to change. And
yeah,
I remember we talked a lot during COVID-19 and your experience and suiting up as a spaceman day in and day out and intubating patients and having to run around and put your own life on the line since we knew so little then. And the first variant seems so, serious or
No, it was
scary.
way worse. Now it's yeah, but back then it was a very deadly disease.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and you were literally on the front lines of care. As you could say, doctors and nurses or health professionals, all frontline staff became kind of soldiers fighting against this virus. We should never forget how serious it was and how it, tested the system to the limits. But I think that the stories that come forward, when I think of you during that period, you were writing a lot about your humanity, your experience, your feelings, and sharing those openly. And I think that we need to draw that out more. I think that we're not failing as a system because we don't, as I said, spend enough or invent enough or train enough. I think we've forgotten that human caring or empathy and engagement and experience is all part of the care. Communication is part of the care. And the book is a hopeful book because I talk about the fact that thankfully we're we have all the things ready. We just need to give our health professionals sufficient bandwidth and attention and support to make it better. And that what the book says is we've got to rebuild a health system that remembers our humanity and returns the responsibility of patient care back to health professionals, back to physicians, to be the advocates of patient well-being, and listen to our doctors and let them guide some of the action. That power has been taken away from physicians. And as a result of that, I think we're creating a situation of frustration, lack of clarity, and we're losing our sense of urgency. And thank you to you for raising that in your health system. It's very appreciated.
No, thank you very much. And I could tell you, if we get another pandemic, not going to be pretty. And you're going to get a mass exodus of really, really talented healers that are going to call it quits and throw in the towel. So God forbid, and may He protect us from another pandemic. I mean, I shudder to think if we have another virus that is as contagious as COVID, but as deadly as Ebola. God help us, and I hope that doesn't happen for another 1,000 years, let alone, 100 years. And I tell you, this episode has been as therapeutic for me. Thank you. And your book really, really brought it back and reminded me.
Here's a
Yes,
picture of the book. Here's a hard
absolutely.
copy of the book. I like the soft cover, by the way, which is less
It
expensive and and smaller and easier to portable. But
yes,
publisher
absolutely.
publisher really was into hardcover.
No, it's a really very, very, very nice. I'll go put a link to the book in the show notes. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for reminding me the purpose of what we do. And I pledge to you and myself that I will try to remember with every single patient encounter to try to do whatever I can to make them feel better, both medically and emotionally as best I can. And I pray that I remember with every single patient encounter, and then try to bring that spirit over the patients and the programs that I lead as a physician leader, because the beauty of being a physician individually is that you bring that healing one patient at a time.
That's
A
right.
physician leader can bring that positive change to scale. And that's why I love being both. So
Well, I
thank you
tell
for
you,
that. Thank you
talk
for this
about
book. Thank you for that reminder.
talk about return on investment of on 52,000 words. I think you've just mapped it out, and thank you so much for that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Gil Bashe, it was an honor to have you on the show. And thank you for all you do. And we'll see you soon.
Amen. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for listening. Sign up at healthcaremusings.com to get every episode delivered directly to your email. And please don't forget to leave a 5-star review. Thank you so much.